Welcome back, guys. This is John Polemy of the Actionable Intelligence Alert. Today is April 1st, 2018. Happy Easter. And this week's video, I want to talk about an update on cobalt. That's a mineral that I discussed or was one of my investment themes for 2008, along with oil and uranium. And I want to do an update because the cobalt price has been on the march higher recently. And I really haven't talked about it very often since the original article. One of the things I want to talk about is that it appears that China is driving the cobalt market higher and seems to be the major player and influencer of the cobalt price. And I want to discuss why that is. So there's a big problem in Asia and emerging markets. As you can see, here's a picture. You can self-explanatory, and the problem is that people are literally choking on the pollution and particulate matter that's being generated by automobiles, buses, and coal-fired power plants. It's been estimated, one by the World Health Organization, anecdotally, that living in a city like this and breathing this type of air is equivalent to smoking 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So that is a problem for these governments and for these places, as these cities are becoming almost unlivable. So, at least in China, the Chinese government understands this issue and is moving to solve the problem. Some of the things they're doing is they have been closing a lot of polluting mines and factories. I mean, anybody used to be able to just go and open any factory or mine and just not follow any environmental rules or regulations, and that resulted in a tremendous amount of externalities and pollution being generated. So basically, the free-for-all is over. Another thing the Chinese are doing is they are moving to build their nuclear fleet out. As I've said before, I believe that nuclear power is the cleanest, safest, best source of electric power available, especially if you're going to move to an electric vehicle type situation. You need clean electricity. It kind of doesn't make sense to have electric vehicles and then charge them with coal power electricity. Another thing the Chinese are doing is they're removing internal combustion engine powered cars and buses from the roads. You see this in some of the cities where you're only allowed to bring your car if you have a gas powered car, diesel powered car. You're only allowed to bring it into the city on even or odd numbered days, depending on your license plate. But another thing that they're doing is moving to an electric vehicle policy. They want to see more electric vehicles on the road. That is a policy that the government has said they want to see, and therefore, when you have a communist government, a centrally planned situation like that, if they say they want more electric vehicles, there will be more electric vehicles. Another thing I think that people kind of don't pay attention to, and why I think that this new policy towards cleaning up the air is going to become more and more important to the Chinese government, is that people in China, they're becoming more and more wealthy. They're becoming more and more sophisticated. They travel around the world. They see other places. And when they come back to China and then they can't breathe the air, this causes problems, and it causes dissent, and it causes people to get ideas. And it's compounded by the fact that for many years, China had a one-child policy where couples were only allowed to have one child. And in China, children are very important because there's not a big, huge social security or social welfare safety net put in place by the government. So children have historically been looked at as not only the future, but as caretakers of the older population when they become old. So a lot of time and effort and money is invested in these children by the parents and grandparents. They do not want to see them harmed by breathing dirty air. And people become more and more outspoken, regardless if it's a communist government or a monarchy or democracy, if that type of pollution is present. And ultimately, if the problem isn't solved, it brings the legitimacy of the regime into question. People start thinking, well, if they can't even solve this pollution problem, what's the use of having these people be in power? And government realizes this. They can put people in prison, but you can't put 1.2 billion people in prison. You can't kill 1.2 billion people. Um, you can certainly jail dissidents and stuff like that, but as if you get a whole population's view shifting against you, that's becomes untenable for the government. So they realize this, and they are taking steps to deal with it. Now, this is a chart of electric vehicle sales for last year. You can see China had the most electric vehicles sold last year, not as a percentage of total passenger car sales, but total number. And we expect that to increase based on the policies that the government there has articulated. What's interesting about the Chinese is that they work in these 5-year plans. So I can assure you that if it was decided at the upper echelons of the government that they were going to have more electric vehicles, then it's not like in the US or in Western Europe where these goofy politicians get up there and just make these proclamations based on no history, fact, knowledge, or anything. When the Chinese say something, I can guarantee you it's already been well thought out, the details are in place, and things have been lined up such that the policy will be successful well before it's announced. So if the Chinese say they are moving to have electric vehicles, they know how they're going to get to their goal. So here's the price of cobalt, and this is why we're talking about it. The price has really moved up quite a bit. It's almost doubled over the last year. And although I don't know how high it's going to go, I certainly suspect we'll see 50 fairly soon. And I don't think $100 a pound is out of the question. I think what needs to be recognized and to review in people's minds is the idea of cobalt supply. It's not going to be easy to increase the supply of cobalt as it is in a lot of other metals. For example, copper or nickel or zinc or something like this. Maybe not zinc, but copper or nickel. If the copper supply or price goes up, it's there's a lot of copper around. It's not hard to find. The process is known. The problem with cobalt is there's not a lot of primary cobalt mines. And what I mean by primary cobalt mines is that there's not just a bunch of concentrations of cobalt just sitting around the world waiting to be found or that we know about. Cobalt is normally a byproduct mineral of nickel and copper mining. So what that means is if you're mining copper as your primary mine target, you're getting a certain amount of cobalt along with that, similar to certain nickel mines. If you have a primary nickel mine, like the Norilsk mines up in northern Russia, they mine a lot of nickel there, and they are getting a byproduct with the nickel of certain amount of lesser amounts of cobalt. So the problem is that cobalt is very important in the batteries for these electric vehicles. A lot of these batteries have lithium or nickel in them, and cobalt acts as a stabilizing agent to allow the quick recharge and discharge of these batteries. So I hear sometimes on certain message boards, well, scientists at so-and-so lab are working on a new methodology where cobalt won't be necessary, so it's not a problem. Guys, new battery technology is not like microchips where it's Moore's law, where the computing power goes up by 100% and the cost goes down by 50% every other year. It's not like that. You're dealing with chemistry here, and the things that are going on in labs very well may, come out in the next few years or 10 years. But right now they're science projects. We're talking about here and now. And in order to have electric vehicles that have decent range, you need to have cobalt in the batteries. Okay, it's just that simple. When I don't get into these, what could happen in 5 or 10 years on some technology in some obscure lab somewhere, who knows what. I mean, the fact of the matter is that those are science projects, and even if they work in the lab, it doesn't mean it will work in real life. It doesn't mean that it can be done at a commercial scale or cost. So we have to deal with the facts as they are. I believe that eventually we're going to have interstellar star travel like in Star Trek. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, though. I mean, so it doesn't really matter what I believe or what I think. It matters what's reality. That's kind of a, that's kind of sidetrack a little bit here. That's part of the problem with a lot of so-called investors out there. I mean, they don't look at things for the way they are. I mean, people, I've talked to so many people. I see it on message boards. I see it on communications. People write me emails. It's like, what is this person thinking about? I mean, it doesn't matter what you want or what you think. It only matters what is. And what is right now is that cobalt is needed for electric vehicle batteries, okay? And that there's not enough of it. That's a simple fact. So that allows investors and speculators that understand that to take positions and make money. So, um, going back to cobalt, China, as I said before, puts together these 5-year plans. Their government, obviously, the Communist Party there controls things. They have these 5-year plans. And I'm sure when they sit down and say, look, we need to deal with this pollution problem, we have all these vehicular traffic, we need to move to more electric vehicles. So if they decide that that's what they're going to do, I can certainly guarantee you they understand the current technology and the necessary element that they need in these batteries, which is cobalt. And we know that because if you go and do some research, you will see that for many years, China has had a policy of going to countries around the world that have raw materials that they need and forming long-term lasting relationships with these countries, which include infrastructure investments and other, call them bribes or whatever, or creating these relationships where they come in and spend money in the country to upgrade the infrastructure and then use that as a bargaining chip or leverage to secure long-term supplies of raw materials that they need. And you can see this if you go watch a movie uh, on YouTube. It's called Empire of Dust. It shows Chinese, it's a documentary, it shows a Chinese construction company working in Congo building roads and a highway. And it's kind of interesting because not only does it show them doing these things, but it also gives you an idea of how the Chinese think and how they perceive or what their view is towards other people, especially Africa and Africans. It's not, they're not egalitarians, let me put it this way. They don't think very highly of Africa or Africans. They look at it as a source of raw materials to move forward what they need to do in China. It's that simple. So, another thing China's been doing is recently some announcements came out where they cut some deals with, they just cut a big deal with Glencore, which is a major mining firm which has huge copper mines in Congo that happen to have cobalt byproduct. And they've basically secured the supply, a third of the supply of cobalt from these particular mines for the next 3 years. So here's an article that was in Bloomberg. It says China leaving West behind in race for electric car raw materials. It's just what I was talking about. It's not some recent phenomena. It's been going on for years before politicians in the West even had a clue what was going on. So when you hear some politician in the UK or France say, well, we're going to get rid of internal combustion engines by 2040, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen, guys, because they just don't have the raw materials. I saw a recent announcement a couple months ago where I think it might have been Volkswagen. I think it was. They invited a bunch of the cobalt or mining companies that had cobalt resources to come in, and they thought they were just going to have this big symposium and say, okay, we want to buy all your cobalt for some low price, and they didn't secure any contracts. The people that have the cobalt understand the market. They understand that they have leverage over these companies. And if these companies want to move forward with electric vehicles and with batteries that have any kind of range, they need cobalt. And there was another announcement this week where I think Volkswagen's finally getting the message, after the big diesel scandal. I think they are really incentivized to move to this electric vehicle products. They made an announcement they're going to spend $25 billion to secure technology, supplies, raw materials for electric vehicle batteries. And that may go up to $60 billion, is what the article said. So we've seen other manufacturers like Volvo say they're going to move to all electric vehicles by 2020. I've heard a lot of things. all the manufacturers now are moving to build products. Obviously, Nissan and Toyota are moving that way. So U.S. manufacturers. So the race is on, and so we don't know how high the price of cobalt will go. Eventually, I think that the price will go to a sufficient level where every primary cobalt mine that is available to be built will be built, and the supply will be um, met. Obviously, technology advances, and as the price goes up, other technologies and maybe substitution will take place. So, but this isn't going to happen in the next year or two. So that's where the opportunity lies. I'm hesitant to recommend a lot of these Cobalt Juniors because, quite frankly, even at the current price of Cobalt, projects just don't make sense for a lot of these guys. And you're still dealing with a lot of moose pasture and a lot of hopes and dreams. Now, that doesn't mean those stocks can't move up. It's pure speculation. They'll go up and they'll go down. So I think if you're going to be in the Cobalt space, my original recommendation was that company, uh, Cobalt 27 Capital. I think you got a lot of smart guys over there. They know what they're doing. They secured a huge amount of physical cobalt. I think it was like 3.5 ton, 3,500 or 3,000 to 4,000 tons of physical cobalt that they have in warehouse, which is awesome. And now, they have some folks over there that have some experience with streaming and royalties that came over from Sandstrom Gold. Uh, and I think they're moving in that direction now. And I think that just hitching your wagon to a management team like that, where they have all the information about all the different cobalt deposits and all the different mines and miners, and they'll just be signing uh, streaming and royalty contracts. Let them do the work. That's the way I look at it because I just don't have the time to get into every single little Cobalt Junior. Now I do have a small package of Cobalt Juniors that I bought that are based in Australia and Canada, but like I said, they're pure speculation. The mines may never even be built. So, those I'm hesitant to recommend those at this time just because some of them have moved quite a bit. They've been up 3, 4 times, and one of them's up 10 times. So, I think Cobalt still has an excellent future. I still think that we're early in the cycle for Cobalt. I think that a lot of people still don't understand. They just think, well, if the cobalt price goes up, somebody will just go build cobalt mines. It's not that easy. And I think that that's where a lot of our advantage comes from, guys. We understand these things. We've educated ourselves in these things, and arbitraging people's lack of knowledge and understanding of how these things work is where the key to success is. The man with the best information usually wins or comes out on top. And I think, understanding how this market really works and the real supply demand dynamic around cobalt will lead you to making some money in this space. So that's it for this week, guys. I appreciate you watching the videos, and I will put a link to the Cobalt articles that I've written in the comments section or in the description section for those of you who want to read more about it or don't fully understand the cobalt market. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.